Incredible tale: how a brave woman's heartwarming rescue in a snowstorm changed a billionaire's life. The blizzard swept into Maplewood, Minnesota, like a roaring beast, fierce and unforgiving. Snowflakes danced wildly through the air, swirling against the twinkling holiday lights that adorned every storefront. But in this small town, warmth flickered amidst the frost, specifically at the Maplewood diner, where laughter and the aroma of bacon and coffee usually filled the air. Jane Waters, a 33-year-old single mother, dashed between tables, wearing a warm smile even as she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. Today, however, the diner stood nearly empty, with the storm pushing everyone to find shelter. "Hey, Jane. You closing up soon?" called Sam, the cook, his voice weighed down by the chill seeping through the windows. "Yeah, just a few more minutes," Jane replied, her heart tightening. She would have to explain to her kids once again why their dinner would be a little late. As she wiped down the counter, the howling wind grew louder, pulling her gaze outside. That was when she noticed a sleek car, enormous and shiny, stuck in a snowdrift, tires spinning uselessly against the icy trap. She squinted through the swirling snow, recognizing the vehicle. It belonged to billionaire Mark Thompson, the man everyone spoke of, his reputation an ominous shadow over her community. At first, she felt a knot of hesitation. This man represented everything Jane resented: a cushy life and unearned privilege. Yet, as she watched him wrestle with panic, her heart softened. He was human, just like everyone else, shivering in that bitter cold. "I'll be right back," Jane shouted to Sam. She threw on her coat and stepped out into the storm. The biting wind stung her cheeks, but she pressed on, every ounce of pride and resolve coiling in her chest. "Need some help?" Jane called out, making her way through the blinding snow. Mark looked up, his features sharp and tense against the flurry of white. Yes. Please." His voice cracked, fear threading through his words as he struggled at the wheel. The townsfolk often whispered about Mark's cold demeanor in board meetings, but right now, he was just a man, stranded and vulnerable. Jane fought the wind, bracing herself against the storm as she grabbed the door handle. With a swift push, she opened it. "Let us get you out of here." Before they even reached the diner, townspeople had begun to trickle outside, eyebrows raised in disbelief. "What's going on?" the murmurs echoed, skepticism tinged with curiosity. Jane knew they'd question her motives, some would even accuse her of seeking fame. Yet, with every step, she felt the flicker of something greater between her and Mark, an unbreakable connection that went beyond money or status. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Once they stumbled into the safety of the diner, the warmth hit them like a hug. A few locals looked at Mark with narrowed eyes, but Jane waved her hands, muttering a reassurance. "He's okay, folks. Just temporarily lost, that's all." As the storm continued to rage outside, the truth began to unravel. Mark stood there, his perfectly tailored suit clashing against the diner's homely decor. He began to see the world in a new light, one where bravery was often overlooked, where Jane's grit and strength stood as a testament to the spirit of the holiday. Could he transform his life into something meaningful? Could he help shine a spotlight on her story? The flickering diner lights struggled against the fierce winds pounding at the windows. Jane's heart raced with uncertainty, for in that moment she realized the challenge ahead. Would the community rally behind her bravery, or would Mark's presence only stoke the flames of their suspicions? As she caught Mark's eye, she felt a spark of hope that resonated with the storm outside, and in that fleeting second, Jane yearned for a change so profound it could melt away the walls built by judgment and prejudice. Would Mark step up, or would he retreat into his insulated world, leaving her story to wither away like the snow? With these questions looming like the swirling snowstorm outside, The heart of Maplewood beat with a rhythm of anticipation. Mark felt the heat of the diner's light wrap around him like a delicate blanket. It was an alien warmth, foreign yet magnetic, drawing him closer to Jane and away from the frigid gusts outside. The skeptical glances of the townsfolk were woven into the air, thick with doubt. But Jane's kindness, a simple act of humanity, felt much bigger than any opinions. As she poured steaming coffee into a chipped mug and slid it across the counter, their eyes locked. For a brief moment, time stood still, and he saw not just a waitress, but a woman brimming with strength, with compassion. He realized how often he'd overlooked that in his climb to the top. "Thank you for saving me," he murmured, his voice barely rising above the thrum of the diner. Jane shrugged, brushing off his gratitude, but the flush on her cheeks told a different story. "We all need help sometimes," she replied, trying to sound nonchalant, but the crack in her voice betrayed her emotions. Just minutes ago, she was worried about dinner. Now, she had dragged a billionaire into her world. "Why were you out here in the storm?" she asked, genuine curiosity lacing her words. Mark ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. "I was visiting some clients. I thought I could make it back before the weather hit. Obviously, I miscalculated." A nervous chuckle escaped him as he remembered the swirling snow, completely at odds with his structured world of meetings and contracts. "Maplewood can surprise you," Jane replied, a dimple forming in her cheek as she leaned against the counter, easing into an exchange built on trust, even if fragile. "You really should be careful. People get stuck out there all the time. They don't always get back." He watched her as she busied herself, refilling mugs and serving food. There was something reassuring about her movements, a comforting rhythm to the diner. Each person around felt more like family in a shared space, and it stirred within him a longing he hadn't felt in years. The storm continued to howl outside, but inside, a spark was igniting. Mark recalled all the things that made him wealthy, all the possessions that meant so little in this moment compared to the warmth radiating from Jane's spirit. "Who are you, really?" he asked softly. The question caught her off guard, but not in a bad way. "Just a mom trying to get things done," she replied, a hint of defensiveness and pride mingling in her voice. But there was more. He could see it behind her eyes, a reservoir of stories yet to be told. "Do you love this job?" he pressed, sensing there was a deeper reason behind her smile. "It's not just a job to me," she said softly. "It's a lifeline. It's what I do to feed my boys and keep a roof over our heads." His heart twisted with a pang of empathy, and for the first time, he realized that his world of high-stakes deals stood in stark contrast to her daily battles. Outside, the snow kept falling, but a new idea was beginning to blossom in Mark's mind. Wouldn't it be incredible if he could use his resources to help someone like Jane? But how could he approach it? His thoughts raced for just a moment, and then he caught her gaze again, feeling the weight of his decision looming large. Should he say something? Could there be a way for him to make a difference without coming off as patronizing? "Listen," he started, catching her attention again, "maybe there's something I can do to help?" Her brow furrowed, skepticism lined her features. "Help how?" Mark took a deep breath and let the doubts leave him. This could be the beginning of something, a bridge between their worlds. And yet, uncertainty lingered over them both, casting shadows even in the diner's bright light. Would they both be willing to cross that bridge together, or would the chasm of distrust keep them apart? The snowstorm outside raged on, but amidst the chaos, hope began to shimmer, barely visible but potent enough to ignite a spark of change. What awaited them on the other side of this moment? Would they find a way, or was this just a fleeting connection that would vanish once the storm passed? Mark could see the flicker of doubt in Jane's eyes, and it tugged at him. His heart raced, not from the intensity of the conversation alone but from the realization that in a matter of moments, he had unearthed a yearning deep within himself. "Help how?" she repeated, her tone a mix of apprehension and curiosity. He leaned closer, his voice softening as he considered his words. "I know it might sound odd, but there has to be something I can do. Maybe your boys could use a better opportunity," or the words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Jane shook her head lightly, a sad smile gracing her lips. I appreciate it, really, but I'm fine. I make it work. They're happy. Her response was genuine, but something in her eyes told him otherwise. The struggle was there, hiding beneath the surface like the snow covering the world outside. But it's not just about making it work, Mark pressed gently. Sometimes, we all need a little extra support. I know I've had help along the way. Isn't there anything? Maybe school supplies, or it's not that simple, she interjected, an edge creeping into her voice. I don't want charity. I don't want anyone to think differently of me. There was a fire in her words, a fierceness that caught him off guard. Mark held up a hand, a gesture of peace. I'm not offering charity, Jane. I'm offering a partnership. The term felt foreign on his lips, but windows of understanding began to crack open between them. I see strength in you, how you care for your boys. I have resources that could help with that strength, not diminish it. Jane bit her lip, the flicker of hope battling with her instinct to reject his offer. It's so hard to get close to someone like you, she finally admitted, her voice dropping low. You've built your empire, and I'm just trying to keep my life together. Mark leaned back, letting her words wash over him. True, he lived in a world of boardrooms and million-dollar deals, but that didn't mean he lacked connection or understanding of people's struggles. In fact, every deal had been an emotional leap, navigating through the fears and hopes of others. I want to burn down that gap, Jane, show you that life doesn't have to be just about survival. We can build something together. Silence grew between them as they both nursed their thoughts, the noise of the diner fading into a dull hum. The other customers continued on with their lives, unaware of the small revolution blossoming in their midst. But outside, the wind howled and swirled relentlessly, the blizzard an ominous backdrop to their burgeoning connection. Just then, the bell above the door jangled, and in strode a couple with a worried look, checking the front window and shaking off snow. The moment snapped back to the reality around them. Mark glanced back at Jane, catching her looking at the new arrivals with a frown. Maybe I should leave, he murmured, uncertain of how things would unfold. No, she said, her tone firm. Please stay. They need help too. He couldn't help but admire her courage even further. It was as if every person that walked through the door was a piece of a puzzle, each with their own struggle and story. As the couple explained their predicament, Mark felt the weight of his thoughts merge with Jane's spirit. Perhaps this was just the beginning, the first step toward changing lives, not just for Jane and her boys, but for others fighting their own battles. Before long, a plan began to take shape in his mind, one that could unite them both. Gathering his breath, he was about to share it when a sudden realization washed over him. Was he ready to dive deeper into the messy world of human compassion while facing his own fears and insecurities? Outside, the snow fell relentless, but within the diner, a small flame of hope was igniting. How far could that hope stretch? And would Mark find the courage to embrace the path being laid before him, or would he retreat back to the safety of his high-rise world? As the couple settled in at a table nearby, Mark stole a glance at Jane. She was focused, her brow furrowed as she listened intently. He could see the compassion radiating from her, the urgency in her spirit. Whether it was the snow outside or the lives unfolding before them, they were both caught in a moment that stretched far beyond the diner's four walls. Mark, Jane said suddenly, pulling him from his thoughts. She leaned in a bit closer, her voice barely above a whisper. What if we really did something about it? Not just here, but for everyone who needs help. His heart skipped a beat. Her words were a spark igniting the tinder that was already smoldering in him. You mean like a community initiative? He asked, envisioning something larger than he had first considered. Something that gets people involved, about more than just giving handouts? Exactly, Jane said, her expression brightening. We could provide resources, education, support. We could create a safe space. The fierceness he had noticed earlier returned to her voice, charging the air between them with conviction. He couldn't help but feel inspired by her passion. But what if we fail? He voiced cautiously, afraid to dampen the newfound flame. What if it falls apart? People could start questioning our intentions. Jane's eyes lit with determination. And what if it doesn't? What if we touch even a handful of lives? You've built your empire on taking risks. Why not invest in something that could genuinely change lives? We could do this together. Mark considered her words carefully. Would stepping out of his comfort zone, leaving the world of spreadsheets and board meetings, really be worth it? His internal dialogue was interrupted by the couple at the next table, and their words seeped into his consciousness. They don't have anyone to help them, the woman said, her voice tinged with worry as she shared her story. They're so alone in this storm. The man beside her nodded, visibly distressed. It's tough out there. We lost everything this year. I just don't know where we can turn. Mark felt that familiar ache in his chest, the pull of empathy that had brought him to this moment. He turned back to Jane, who was watching him with keen anticipation. Let us do it, he said, the decision bubbling up like excitement on New Year's Eve. Relief and joy washed over her face. Really? You mean it? Absolutely, he replied. But we need a plan. We should talk to others, gather support. I think we can make this happen. The bell jingled again, and an older man entered the diner, his face weathered but hopeful. Mark sensed a change in the atmosphere as more people filtered in, each of them wrestling with their own struggles yet drawn together by the warmth of the diner. In that moment, Mark realized this wasn't just a quest for him or Jane. They were building a bridge, one that spanned across their differences and connected hearts in a way he had rarely felt in his carefully curated world of finance and power. As a shared conversation unfolded among the diner's new guests, a sense of community began to blossom. Mark felt that flame of hope burn brighter within him. Maybe this storm isn't just a hindrance, Jane said, her eyes scanning the faces around them. Maybe it's the catalyst for something incredible. He nodded, feeling the weight of anticipation in the air. What could grow from this snowstorm, this seemingly helpless situation? Could they really light a fire beneath the community's struggles? The warmth in the diner became almost tangible, wrapping around them like a thick blanket. And in that cozy atmosphere, as laughter mingled with concern, Mark knew they were on the cusp of something big. Yet a question lingered. Would they have the strength to follow through and inspire others to join their cause? Or would the weight of doubt extinguish their dream before it had a chance to shine? Mark took a deep breath and allowed the warmth of the diner to seep into his bones. The moment felt charged with potential, and he knew that this was just the beginning of something meaningful. He glanced at Jane, whose eyes sparkled with the excitement of possibility. Okay, Mark said, leaning slightly forward, let us start by talking to some of the people here. See what they think. Jane nodded vigorously, her enthusiasm infectious. Let us ask them what they need. Their voices are the key to this. As they made their way to the couple seated at the next table, Mark felt a rush of adrenaline. Each step felt like a step towards something greater, an effort to bridge the gap between the lives they had worked so hard to build and the struggles that loomed so close. Excuse me, Jane began, a touch of nervousness in her voice. We couldn't help but overhear your story. We're looking to help people in our community, especially those facing hardships right now. What do you think would make a difference for you? The woman's face lit up with surprise. You want to help us? She exchanged glances with her partner, who nodded solemnly. It's been overwhelming, the man admitted, his voice breaking slightly. We have nowhere to turn. I just need someone to listen and help us find a way through. Mark felt a swell of emotion rise within him. We'd like to create a space where people can share their experiences, get support, and connect with resources. Does that sound like something you'd want? Yes, the woman replied, her voice trembling with hope. We just want to feel like we matter. To know we're not alone. As the couple spoke, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that this was his calling. They moved from table to table, listening to stories of loss, despair, but also resilience. With every conversation, their purpose solidified, turning a fleeting thought into a tangible mission. After an hour, Mark and Jane returned to their table, feeling lighter yet more focused than ever. The conversations fueled their determination as they shared ideas, knitting together a vision for the future. What if we held workshops? Jane suggested, her fingers dancing on the tabletop. Not just about resources, but skills, things like budgeting, cooking, job readiness. Exactly, Mark said, excitement bubbling within him. And we can leverage the connections we already have. My network could add real strength to this initiative. They brainstormed, laughing and jotting down ideas on a napkin, unaware of time slipping away. Each stroke of the pen felt like planting a seed in soil ready to bloom. Suddenly, a loud clap echoed in the diner, cutting through their chatter. An elderly woman stood at the entrance, her eyes shimmering with layers of wisdom. "What's going on here?" she inquired, a smile breaking across her face. Mark and Jane exchanged glances, the pulse of their conversations tinging the air with energy. "We're creating a community initiative to help people in need," Mark explained, surprised by how confident he sounded. "Count me in," she declared, her voice rich and warm. "When do we start?" The room erupted in a murmur of agreement. Others began to lean in, intrigued and eager to join the cause. Each new conversation tapped into that collective yearning for connection and support. As their ideas spread like wildfire, Mark looked around at the faces lighting up with possibility and passion. He felt something shift within. This isn't just our dream anymore. It belongs to all of us, Jane whispered, her voice full of awe. But just as momentum surged, Mark's phone buzzed in his pocket. Glancing at the screen, his breath caught. It was a message from his partner at work, an urgent reminder of the board meeting he was expected to attend the following day. The world of spreadsheets and profits beckoned, waiting to pull him back into familiar territory. Torn between two worlds, Mark's heart raced. Would he be able to balance his old life with this blossoming new purpose? A soft hand squeezed his arm, jolting him back to the moment, Jane's eyes searching his, filled with understanding. "What are you thinking?" she prompted, sensing his distraction. "I'm just worried," he admitted, feeling vulnerable. "About leaving my old life behind while taking on this new venture." Jane drew in a breath, holding his gaze unwaveringly. "You were never meant to go back entirely. This is your chance to redefine success. We'll figure it out together. But you need to choose now." The weight of her words lingered in the space between them, echoing both promise and challenge. Mark knew he stood at a pivotal crossroads, but which path would he choose? Would he embrace this heartfelt journey or retreat to the comfort of the familiar? As he looked around, the warmth of the diner closing in around him like a carapace, he felt the question crystallize inside him. What would it truly take for him to leap into the unknown? The clatter of dishes and murmurs of laughter faded into white noise as Mark wrestled with his thoughts. Jane's words echoed like a call to arms, urging him to embrace the unknown. But the weight of responsibility bore down on him. Could he really forfeit the life he had built for something so uncertain? He glanced at the elderly woman, who was still smiling, her hands clasped together in excitement, her energy seemingly infectious. Around them, faces glimmered with hope as ideas flowed freely, plans for a community center, resource fairs, maybe even a food pantry. They were all rallying behind something bigger than themselves. "Hey, let us take a moment," Jane suggested, sensing the tension that gripped his heart. "Breathe with me." She exhaled deeply, and Mark followed her lead, letting the air fill his lungs and then escape. Tiny droplets of nervous sweat formed on his brow, but with every shared breath, he felt a little lighter. "Imagine if we did this," she continued, her enthusiasm unwavering. "What if we really didn't just dream about it, but actually changed lives right here? Together?" The thought sent a ripple of warmth through him. He could see it, families coming together, sharing stories, laughter replaced by a sense of belonging. Would it be so wrong to step into that, to make a real difference? "I know the meeting will be tough," she continued, her voice smoothing the edges of his doubts. "But remember, this isn't just another task. This is life. This is people, real lives we could touch. You need to find what makes your heart race." She smiled softly, and something in him uncoiled. He could feel the stirrings of courage crawling up his spine as the realization dawned he wanted to be part of that warmth, to help others face their battles. Just then, the elderly woman stepped closer, her keen eyes glistening with something like reverence. "You both have such a light. I've seen several initiatives in my time, but few begin with such genuine love. Mark felt himself melt a little at those words. Could they really be making a difference already? Thank you, he said earnestly, and in that moment he felt the weight of choice shift. He imagined waking up each day, working not for numbers but for people. Could he bear the loss of his old life? The question hung in the air as promise and potential wrapped around him like a warm embrace. Suddenly, the bell above the diner's door jingled excitedly, breaking the spell. Mark turned, expecting the usual rush of evening customers, but instead, it was a small group of families trudging in, snowflakes still clinging to their scarves and coats. They looked weary but hopeful, their faces lighting up at the sight of the bustling diner. Jane's eyes sparkled anew as she turned to Mark, her excitement infectious. Imagine if we help them establish some connections tonight. Look, they have stories. And we're here to listen, he replied, a newfound energy propelling him forward. As they approached the group, Mark felt invigorated, ready to lend a hand. The words began to flow, and soon they were swept into heartfelt exchanges, laughter mixing with the tiny sounds of life within the diner. It was simply beautiful. But just as they began to engage, his phone buzzed again, pulling him from the moment. The urgency within the message sent a chill down his spine. It was from his boss, asking if they should discuss his commitment at the meeting. Mark? Jane's voice cut through his thoughts again. What's wrong? I need to respond to this. His heart sank. Would he always be pulled back to the demands of his previous life? Hey, she said firmly, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Take a moment. Remember what you felt when you walked in here today. The warmth in the diner surged, but it was mixed with anxiety and uncertainty he had felt at that pivotal moment. This would change everything. The thought weighed heavily on him. With a deep, quivering breath, Mark looked from Jane's trusting eyes to the families gathering around them, before scrolling through his messages. Would he step away from the corporate ladder in favor of this new path? In that split second, the choice lay before him, waiting like an adventure just out of reach. Would he dive headfirst into this journey or let the pressures of his old life drag him back down? All or nothing, he murmured, looking at Jane. Taking a steadying breath, he slowly typed back a reply. I'll need to step away for now. Something important is pulling me in a new direction. As he hit send, excitement mingled with trepidation. The question lingered on the breeze. Would it be enough to guide him toward the dreams not just of himself, but of a community waiting for change? As Mark sent the message, a strange sense of clarity washed over him. The weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. He was stepping into something new, something that could reshape his life. A small voice deep down whispered anxious doubts, but he chose to ignore it, choosing instead to focus on the raw energy of the diner around him. Families were sharing laughter and warmth despite the biting cold outside. Children spun around in excitement, calling out to their parents, and everyone congregated around the tables united in their pursuit of a better tomorrow. Mark sensed a pulse of hope beating steadily among them, like a living thing. Let us get their stories, Jane said, her eyes brimming with enthusiasm. She moved toward them, beckoning Mark to follow. But he hesitated for just a moment, feeling the tug of his past life. Then the elderly woman's kind face flashed back into his mind. Her words echoed in his heart, such a light with newfound determination. He pushed his doubts aside and joined Jane. They walked over to a family gathered at a corner table, where the parents were busy unwrapping their children's coats, laughter punctuating their hurried motions. Hey there! Jane greeted, her smile bright. We're helping out tonight. Want to share what brought you here? The mother paused, momentarily startled by the question, then relaxed into a soft grin. We just moved to the area. It's been a lot at once, a new home, new schools. We thought we would check out the diner. There's something about the warmth here. Mark's heart fluttered. He felt the same warmth. It was pure and palpable, something he was eager to help spread. We're trying to make connections, Mark said, unable to hide the eagerness in his voice. If you have ideas, anything you need or want, we want to help. He could see the glimmer of hope's spark in the mother's eyes. Well, my husband and I were hoping to meet other families, maybe start a group for parents? Connections can be isolating with the move. That's a great idea, Jane exclaimed. We could organize a meetup right here. Everyone is looking for community. Would you like to be part of planning it? Mark watched the family light up, a surge of energy driving him onward. As conversations blossomed around him, he engaged with other families, soaking in their dreams, their struggles, their wishes. It felt like collecting pieces of something sacred. Time slipped by in the warmth of the diner. Friends were being formed, connections made. An old man recalled how he once led a youth group, and a young couple shared their vision for a resource fair. His heart swelled with excitement. This was what he had longed for but never known: genuine human connection. But then, amidst all the laughter and shared stories, his phone buzzed again, slicing through the blissful chaos. Mark glanced down, dread settling in his stomach. It was another message from his boss, more urgent than before, asking why he hadn't responded about the business meeting. Mark? Jane's voice faltered, concern etching her features. What is it? His heart raced. Those few words could pull him away from the moment, potentially back to the life he was trying to escape. Sensing Jane's gaze, he quickly shoved the phone back into his pocket, making a silent vow. I refuse to let this define me, he declared softly, yet firmly. Jane smiled, a spark of understanding passing between them as if they had shared an unspoken bond. With renewed determination, Mark leaned in closer to the families, the laughter ringing in his ears drowning out the noise of obligation. Just as joy filled the room, a sudden crash echoed through the diner. The door burst open, wind howling violently, bringing with it a swirling cloud of snow. The joyous atmosphere shifted, tension filling the air. Is everyone okay? Mark turned towards the entrance, his heart rapid with concern. As he approached the newcomer, he realized the storm was not merely physical. The person who had just entered held a deep-seated yearning for belonging that resonated with him, the excitement of helping others now set against a backdrop of mounting uncertainty. It's going to get wild out there, the newcomer said in a low voice, scanning the room with urgency. With that, Mark sensed a new chapter was unfolding right in front of him. What awaited beyond the storm? Would it draw them closer, or would it test their newfound connections in ways they hadn't anticipated? The wind howled as the door slammed shut behind the newcomer. Mark could see the young woman, her cheeks flushed from the cold, eyes wide with apprehension. She was clearly shaken but determined as she moved further into the diner, shaking off the snow that clung to her jacket. I hope everyone is safe, she called out, her voice piercing through the anxious murmur that had settled over the room. I just came from down the street, and it's getting pretty rough out there. Jitters coursed through the diner. Families exchanged concerned glances, and the laughter faded, replaced by whispers about the storm. Mark felt a surge of responsibility. This was not just a diner filled with strangers anymore. It was a community that was beginning to form, and they needed to stay connected and safe. Let us all gather around, Mark suggested, trying to quench the rising unease. We can share stories, make sure everyone is accounted for. Jane nodded, her eyes on the newcomer. What's your name? Call me Emily, she replied, brushing a few stray locks of hair behind her ear. I was just at a friend's house, her power went out, and I wanted to warn folks to be careful. I guess I got here just in time. Mark watched Emily's body language, her tense shoulders slowly relaxing as the warmth of the diner wrapped around her. There was something poignant about her need to check on others amidst her own uncertainties. Thank you for coming in, he said gently, trying to ease her burden. We'll make sure everyone is okay. Can you tell us how bad it is outside? Emily took a breath, steadying herself. It's really coming down hard. Snow is piling up fast, and the wind, well, it's pretty brutal. I think we're in for a long night. Just then, a little boy's voice echoed across the diner. Is it going to be like a snow day, Mommy? At that, everyone chuckled softly, lightening the heavy atmosphere. Mark smiled at the boy's innocence. Well, it could be fun if we stick together, he said, feeling a hopeful pulse beat through the room again. We can have a little community gathering right here. Excitement began to bubble among the diners. The families moved their tables together, the air suddenly vibrant with ideas. Games, stories, and shared meals sparkled in conversation as laughter began to melt the fear. As they settled in, Mark felt a rush of warmth. He hadn't realized he had been waiting for this connection all along. He turned to Jane, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. They were doing this. They were building something. But then, amid the chatter, he stole a glance at Emily. She appeared lost in thought, staring out at the snowy darkness beyond the window. The flickering lights cast shadows across her face, revealing a flicker of vulnerability that caught Mark's attention. "Emily, are you okay?" he asked, concern etching his features as he approached her. She turned to him, her eyes piercing through the storm of emotion swirling just beneath the surface. "I'm just thinking." "About?" Mark ventured gently. "It's been a lonely few months for me," she confessed, a tremor in her voice. "I moved here recently, and I thought I could handle it. But I didn't expect to feel so isolated." Her words hung in the air between them, resonating with Mark. He understood that ache, the kind that seeped into everyday moments, making them feel heavy and long. "Maybe you just need a community," Mark suggested, the warmth spreading in his chest. "You're not alone anymore, none of us are." Emily looked at him, new hope flickering in her eyes. "I'd like that." Just then, the lights flickered again, and the tension snaked back into the room as a sudden crash echoed outside. People turned toward the windows, fear creeping back into their hearts. "What was that?" a woman gasped. Mark's mind raced. "We need to find out. Everyone okay to stay put, or should we check it out?" He could feel a moment of decision hanging in the air. Would they stick together and face the storm, or would the fear drive them apart? Mark glanced at Emily as she met his gaze. There was strength in her eyes now, forged in vulnerability. The question lingered: how would they reconcile their fears and hopes against the raging storm outside? And in that moment, as the wind howled relentlessly, Mark realized they were on the cusp of a decision that could either strengthen their new bonds or unravel them. Would they find the courage to stand together against their shared uncertainties? Would they choose connection over isolation? Mark's heart raced as he absorbed the gravity of the moment. He could feel the tension vibrating in the air, a mix of fear and the flickering spark of hope. Everyone in the diner was wide-eyed, holding their breath, waiting for someone to take charge. "All right," he finally said, raising his voice above the apprehensive whispers. "Let us not panic. We'll go check it out together." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, a collective tightening of resolve. The warmth of community began to envelop them, pushing back the chill of isolation, if only for a moment. "Who wants to help?" Mark called out, scanning the faces gathered. "I'll go," Emily said, her voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline coursing through her. She looked around, meeting the gazes of those around her, as if to impart courage. "I can't just sit here not knowing what it is." A few others nodded, and soon a small group formed. Mark joined, feeling an unspoken bond forming between them. They were stepping into the uncertainty together, brave souls in a tempest. As they opened the door, the winds hit like a cold slap, tearing at their clothes. Snow swirled, swallowing the world outside in a relentless white. Mark squinted into the storm, trying to make sense of the chaos. What could be made that sound? A voice echoed behind him. He didn't have an answer. They pushed forward cautiously, eyes straining against the icy gusts. "Over there!" Emily called, pointing towards a tangle of branches and what appeared to be part of a fence crushed under a mound of snow. "Maybe it was from that old barn across the street?" Mark nodded, moving closer. A part of him felt a little exhilarated, pulled along by the adrenaline and the shared quest. But a deeper feeling bubbled beneath the surface, the fear of what they could uncover. "It looks like the snow is covering it pretty well," he said, bending to touch the frigid ground. "But it could have knocked something over." As they dug through the snow, he caught glimpses of others, huddling close together, sharing the warmth not just of bodies but of spirits. The small act of solidarity fueled a strength he hadn't expected. Suddenly, a loud crash cut through the air, followed by shouts. They all whipped around, their hearts pounding in unison. The fear returned, but this time, it burned in a desperate resolve. "Stay close!" Mark shouted, leading the group back toward the diner, wondering what could emerge from the storm. As they neared, the diner's flickering lights seemed to dance in rhythm with their racing hearts. Once inside, they caught their breath, shaking off the cold. Panic had transformed into a subtle tension woven with excitement. The other diners were waiting, eyes wide, ready to receive news, good or bad. "Is everyone okay?" Jane asked, her face etched with worry. "We're fine," Mark reassured them quickly. "But there's something out there." We could see traces of a collapse. Emily stepped forward, her expression resolute. "We need to keep watch. We should check on the neighbors too." An elder seated in the corner cleared his throat. "If we're checking, we'd best do it in groups. No one should go alone in this storm." The weight of his words settled over the diner, a tangible reminder of the danger they faced. Mark glanced at Emily, who met his gaze with a look that spoke volumes. They weren't just seeking out a mystery. They were uncovering a way to hold this new community together. "Who wants to pair with us?" he asked, his voice weaving through the energy in the room. Hands began rising, spirits lifting. They were finding their way despite the chaos, forging connections from shared courage. As they prepared to head back out into the tempest, a sudden realization tugged at Mark's heart. This wasn't just about surviving the storm. It was about moving through it, together, uncovering the bonds that could save more than just their lives. But at that moment, another loud crash echoed from outside. A collective gasp rippled through the room, and Mark's mind raced. What had they gotten themselves into, and what awaited them out there in the storm? The urgency of the moment pressed in. Would their bravery lead them to safety and understanding, or deepen the very fears they tried to escape? The blizzard howled, like a desperate cry echoing through the small town of Maplewood. Inside the diner, warmth and light clashed with the icy darkness beyond the window, creating a cocoon of hope amid uncertainty. Mark, Jane, and their newfound companions prepared to venture back out into the storm, a unified front against whatever peril lay waiting. "Let us go, everyone!" Mark called out, his voice steadying the rising tide of fear. He glanced at Jane and saw her determination reflected right back at him. Together they stepped into the swirling chaos, flurries of snow engulfing them as they made their way toward the source of the crash. It felt surreal, almost like a scene from a movie, the contrast of the chaotic storm against their intent to save. The bittersweet bond formed in those shared moments ignited courage in their hearts, and as they trudged through the knee-deep snow, Mark felt a sense of purpose blossoming within him. "Over there!" Emily shouted, pointing toward a heap of destruction by the edge of the old barn. It lay mostly buried beneath the snow, branches and debris strewn everywhere like the aftermath of an explosion. Mark rushed to the pile alongside others, the group pulling together to uncover whatever it was that had fallen. The cold bit at their extremities, but every shiver was overshadowed by the growing fire inside. The need to connect and help each other was stronger than their fear. As they worked, laughter and shouts broke through the storm's howls. Each discovery served as both a challenge and a joy. They were sliding into their roles as a community, woven together by the sheer will to stand against the elements. An image of families gathering, supporting one another, flooded Mark's mind. It was not just about surviving the storm. They were teaching each other to thrive together. "Here! I found something!" a young boy shouted, digging out a partially covered old sled. The group paused, a collective sigh of relief and amusement rippling through the camaraderie. The sled, once forgotten, became a symbol of laughter. Mark saw the familiar glimmer in Jane's eyes, a powerful reminder of innocence, joy, and the simple things in life that brought people together. "Let us find the others," Mark replied with a grin, the playful spirit rekindling the room. As they returned to the diner, sled in tow, the atmosphere shifted again. The cozy environment, filled with candlelight and laughter, embraced them like the hug of an old friend. Mark could see the eyes of the families shining bright. The connection forged in the storm had changed something fundamental within them. "Let us take turns," someone suggested, and soon laughter filled the air as families slid across the makeshift ramp they created. It was beautiful, a moment of exhilaration against the bleak backdrop of the blizzard outside. Amid the joy, an overwhelming feeling washed over Mark. He realized that this wasn't just about a night spent in a diner. They were rewriting their narratives, fostering resilience and hope. The once isolated individuals had become a mosaic of shared experiences, reflections of understanding and care. They were in it together, and from this moment on, their lives would be interwoven. "Mark," Jane said softly, pulling him aside as the laughter echoed in the background. "This can't just be a one-time thing. We have a spark here, a fire that can light something incredible for everyone. We need to keep this momentum." Mark felt a rush of excitement as he nodded. "Absolutely. This can't just end with the storm. We can create a community center, a place where we all come together more than just tonight." He pictured it a safe haven where people could share stories, skills, dreams. It could be a pillar of hope, a bridge to future opportunities. A plan began to solidify in his mind, one that would echo the collective heartbeat of Maplewood, and right then, a little girl's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Mark, can I help?" She tugged at his sleeve, her wide eyes filled with trust. "Of course," he replied, kneeling down to her eye level. "What do you want to help with?" "Making it not just a diner, but a fun place for kids too," she exclaimed. His heart swelled, her innocence fueling his resolve. "Yes. Let us do it together. We'll dream big." They turned back, the entire diner encased in a warm glow of community. An irresistible connection had taken hold. The burdens of their individual struggles felt lighter, as if the blizzard outside couldn't penetrate the fortitude that had blossomed within those four walls. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mark called out, capturing everyone's attention. "I have an idea." The chatter faded, anticipation whisking through the space. Mark felt Jane's supportive presence beside him. "This storm may bring us challenges, but it's also a chance to forge new paths together. Let us build something here, an initiative that stands for all of us." Cheers erupted in response, voices blending with the warmth vibrating in the air. Excitement surged like a tidal wave, pouring forth ideas and passion. The diner, once merely a refuge from the storm, was now the birthplace of hope. Mark felt alive. The road ahead would be long, filled with uncertainties and obstacles, but he was ready to face them, to build something meaningful alongside Jane and this blossoming community. As laughter erupted once more, he looked over at Jane. Their eyes met, a shared understanding passing between them. "Together," he whispered, a vow sealed in the warmth of that snowy night. "Together," she echoed, her smile brighter than the lights adorning the walls of the diner. In that moment, amid the storm, they knew they had found what they were searching for: connection, purpose, and a community built on love, support, and the courage to step into the unknown. It was the beginning of a new chapter, carved in the heart of Maplewood, and no blizzard would ever extinguish that flame. So, take a moment to reflect on what we've built together here, and remember, these stories matter. You need to subscribe now for more inspiring tales like this. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to help this channel grow. Comment your thoughts and feelings about this journey. We want to hear from you. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Together, we can make a difference.